All right, folks, I think we're just about ready to get started here. Sorry we're running a little bit behind today, but I thank you all for coming. We have a really outstanding guest with us this afternoon. John Furman is joining us. A little bit about John. Since 1996, over 1 million people have read John Furman's books. Over 1 million folks. Listened to his audio programs or seen him speak live around the world. His impact is in helping individuals reach their maximum potential by overcoming fears and setting strong goals. His 9 books have been translated into over a dozen languages, and he has spoken to audiences throughout the world. Several of his titles include Reject Me, I Love It, 21 Secrets for Turning Rejection into Direction, Are You Living Your Dream? If They Say No, Just Say Next, which, as a person who went through 2,000 rejections before selling his first book, that's what you got to do. You got to just move on to the next one after that first rejection and just keep it trucking, I think. Another book, The Electronic Dream. Yet another one, Leading Leaders to Leadership. A lot of self-help books, nonfiction books, books for writers. So I think we have a really interesting setup here for today with our guest, John Furman. I thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's nice to be where there's no snow.
Where do you live?
Now, I live here,
Oh.
but I spent the last 24 years in New England, and after we broke the record for snow last year, 10 feet, I said, I stuck around for the record, let somebody have the next one. Thank you, Stacy.
You bet. So I've got about 6 or 7 questions here just to get us started, and then we'll open it up to you guys to carry on the dialogue here. This will go about 60 minutes, as most of you know. My first question is, your first book was rejected by more than 100 publishers. Many of us give up on trying to publish a book long before 100 people say no. Why do you think most people give up, and what, in your case, kept you motivated?
That's the question of the ages, and I wish there was a profound answer. What happened was when I started, I had a simple goal. I wanted to see my name on the cover of a book. I didn't care if it was any good. I didn't care if anybody read it. I just wanted to say, it's mine. And one of the things that I knew, I grew up, my business career was mostly in sales and sales training, and that the people that say no, they're great teachers, but it's not what pays the bills. I also learned enough about publishing to know that it only took one person to say yes to get your foot in the door and get you started. And that's really what happened. I mean, I wish there was this wonderful story of perseverance. The fact was, I'd get a rejection letter, stick it in a folder, and send out another one, and I just kept going. However, probably about halfway through, I don't really know exactly where, one particular letter just, quite frankly, ticked me off, and I just picked up the phone and wanted to find out what made them think they were qualified enough to turn me down. Unfortunately, they were able to explain it, and it wasn't very good. But what it taught me was maybe I should start asking more questions. And really, from about halfway on, just pick a number, 50 rejection letters on, I did start asking questions. What was I doing wrong? And they said, well, we don't have a market for your book. And I decided to explain it to them. Well, of course there is, and I explained it, but it wasn't in the proposal. So now I started to add it to the proposal. And the fact is, the contract that I ultimately signed, had I sent that proposal out first as opposed to the others, I probably would have been turned down by them as well. So it remarkably is. And interestingly enough, Stacey, you're right. Most writers, and I've done a few conferences and I do seminars to help writers, most writers quit after the 10th letter. Why, I don't know. I really don't know. It's a question of what do you want? And for me, it was this revelation that I'm not going to let 10, 20, ultimately, and I did not know that I was turned down 100 times until after I signed the contract, then I counted. I'm not going to let that many answers control my entire life, and that's really what happens. I would imagine in this room the quality of writing is going to far surpass anything I've ever done. The difference between me and a lot of writers was I just sent out one more letter. and here I am.
In direct contrast to all that rejection, one of your more recent books, The Credit Diet, was bid on by several major publishers. What was that experience like when just a few years earlier, more than 100 publishers were rejecting your work?
That's the process I think that we all dream about. And I'll tell you both sides of the story, but initially what happened was a very good friend of mine who was a writer said, you ought to come to the Maui Writers Conference. Oh, of course. Who wouldn't want to go to the Maui Writers Conference, right? And I said, I'm pretty busy. I really can't make it to Maui, considering it was a lot of money at the time. And he said, well, maybe you should get your next manuscript into the Maui marketplace. And that was certainly a little bit closer to my budget. I think it was like $125. And basically what it is you kind of fill out a very brief business plan. Anyway, to make a long story short, after the conference, I get a call from an agent in New York. And they said, we'd really be interested in talking to you. Oh, okay. They said, when is the next time you're going to be in New York? And I said, as a matter of fact, 2 days from now. So I canceled everything I had planned for those 2 days. They never ask really intelligent questions, do they? When can you come and see us? So I drove to New York from New Hampshire, where I was living, and I will tell you, this particular agent, the first one, not the one that ended up representing my book, they both work for the same agency, was a stereotypical Hollywood agent. Female, chain smoking, gravelly voice. How are you? Please sit down, have a seat. Oh, we're gonna do great things. We're gonna go to lunch and blah, blah, blah. So I said, oh, okay. And then I met the one her name was Eileen Cope, and she ended up representing me, and she really was very aggressive and very intelligent. She read the book, and the funny thing was she read the book and actually started following the premise, and by the time I came back, she had already put an extra $1,500 in the bank, eliminated one of her credit cards. So she was pretty convinced it worked. So she says, now we're going shopping. And I mean, again, I'm a guy, so I went, what the heck is wrong with this? And she said, no, we're going shopping for a publisher. And I thought, oh, okay. Very first publisher we go to was John Wiley and Sons. And, I figured we'd meet somebody and that would be it. Well, we get into this room, and the first thing that comes in, there's a woman who's the finance editor, personal finance editor. They have, for the different types of books. And we're chatting, and then in the room comes the vice president in charge of all the editors on that floor. And she's very pleased to meet me. We're going to do great things. And then in comes the marketing director, and she's got an 8-page marketing plan for my book. Now, again, with a background in sales, I'm just sitting back going, we're doing this deal. This is done. Put a fork in it. And I'm really leaning forward to sign. Eileen Cope, she leans back and she goes, well, thank you very much, we have to go. And I'm looking at her like, are you kidding me? She goes, no, we have to go. We expect your best bid by Friday. And off we go. And I get in the elevator and I go, so you've done this before, haven't you? I mean, tell me you know what you're doing. And we went to HarperCollins and we met them. And the guy there was pretty cold, and that one wasn't going to work. Then we took another cab ride to St. Martin's Press. Now, they're in the coolest building in New York. It's one of those triangle buildings. It's like, yeah, exactly. We go up to HarperCollins, and I'll never forget it. We go into this room, and there's like 15 people in the room. And at the end of the table is this guy, and he's like a bald guy, and his shirt's all disheveled, and he's chewing gum, like snapping gum, And he's just sitting back there. Yeah, I know who he is. So then on this side of the table are a couple of editors. On this side of the table are a couple of marketing people. And we're just chatting. And the editors are going, well, how did you come up with this? What are you doing? And Eileen would fill in her thing, and I would tell my side of the story. And I don't know if you remember the movie Big with Tom Hanks. This guy's hand goes up. He goes, excuse me, I don't get it. I'm going, I don't understand. What do you mean you don't get it? You have debt. You can eliminate debt. That's a good thing. He goes, yeah, I don't get it. And the guy way down at the end of the table, he goes, well, I get it. Everybody shuts up. The gum chewer was the boss. He says, I get it. So we leave there, and they had a little bit of a I don't want to say a bidding war, but it went back and forth a little bit, and that was kind of cool. We ended up going with John Wiley. Now, the funny side of that was it was a great life lesson, because of all the books that I've done, it was the one that I got a very nice advance from. Did worse than any of my other books. They wouldn't let me help with the marketing, even though I knew what was going on. So, finding an agent, finding a major publisher may not be the right answer. I've sold far more books, done far better without them. Doesn't mean they're bad. It just means it's not always a fit. So, that was my. But I will say this: the process is awesome. To just go through that one time, they pay for everything. It's really cool.
That is an awesome answer. On the topic of marketing, being as specific as you can, John, what are the 3 best marketing strategies you've learned over the years to help sell your books?
That's a great question. 1, you. And I said this to, I think, a couple of you earlier. We're going to blow some publisher myths out of the water here. Publishers are printers with big egos. Printer is a printer, right? You go in, you want some copies, they print. Publishers don't want to be called printers, but that's basically what they do. They are not going to market the way you can market. Nobody can be passionate about what you write other than you. You're going to be the reason. Now, publishers come into play because of this. Their job is to get the books on the shelves. Your job is to get them off. So number 1 is you. Number 2 is get way outside the box. I'll give you an example. I did a writing seminar, and a woman her name is Jane Pollock. Now, Jane actually speaks all over the world on being an entrepreneur. But at the time, she was just getting started. Jane creates decorative eggs, but I mean exquisite. I have one. It's like a collector's item. It's like a Fabergé egg. And she did a beautiful coffee table book with pictures of her eggs. And she said, I'm not selling a lot of books. So we went outside the box. And it happened to be early March. I said, Jane, what's coming up? She said, the rent, and I got to sell some books. But we started thinking, and Easter was coming up. I said, well, Jane, your book is beautiful. Why not go to like a designer chocolatier? The most exquisite chocolate shops you can find. Get those the really decorative wooden book stands, and start putting your books up. And she did, and the books took off, and she ended up signing a better deal with a better publisher, which does happen. One will buy the book from others. And it's done it's actually created a secondary career for her, talking about being in business for yourself. Think outside the box. Where can I put my book that nobody would think of? What would surprise people? We ended up doing some marketing with the Credit Tide, as an example, having it in credit unions, which is more geared towards savings than, say, lending, even though they provide those services. If you write a novel about a particular area, the tourism, the hotels in that particular area might be a great place to, have the books, put the books in there, let people read them for free if they want to buy them, make a deal with the hotel. And there are things that we talk about in the seminar. So that's the second thing. The third thing is be a publicity machine. When Reject Me, I Love It first came out, that first year I did over 300 radio interviews. Okay, that meant getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do a noontime radio show in Hawaii. It meant leaving New Hampshire at 2 o'clock in the morning to tape a 5-minute TV spot in New York City. You have to do these things, and it's a lot of work now, get paid later type stuff. Articles, any article at all that you can get, that's related to your book, write it, give it for free, offer free excerpts, become a publicity machine. Now, Stacy knows he read a wonderful introduction. You know who wrote that? That would be me. Okay, and do those things, press releases. The internet now is a wonderful place. Okay, I'll tell you, you want to know a really great publicity trick? How many of you have books published now? Great. Tell me about your book.
It's a young adult.
A young adult, okay.
The girl is 13 until she gets married.
Now, what's the title of the book?
My aunt calls me Suri.
Okay, here's a great one. Go on Amazon, okay, in the young adult section, and start reviewing other books in a highly complimentary fashion. Okay, and I'll give you an example. Let's just say that, Joey Gets a Girlfriend. Joey Gets a Girlfriend is the next, and I would put in your title. It is absolutely it's spellbinding. It reaches heights almost equivalent, and what you're doing is you're throwing your name in there. You're at the time. Let me have your book, because I want to get the title right. All right. There we go. Here we go. My Aunt Calls Me Suri. Okay. Yeah. Joey Gets a Girlfriend is the next My Aunt Calls Me Suri. Much like Margie DeVolis. Much like Margie DeVolis, this author weaves the tale of blah, blah, and you just do that, and then you just keep writing it all over. Here's what happens. If somebody were to Google yours, all of those reviews would show up. Again, that's how it ties into the internet. Okay.
So I can go in and.
Yeah, write a review for somebody else's book. Yeah. But tie it into yours.
Submit it to who?
You just put it right on Amazon.
Like blog it on?
There's any book on Amazon can be reviewed. It says click to review this book,
Oh, right.
and you write a review. I'll give you an example. Yeah, when the Credit Diet first came out, what's his name? Dave Ramsey was having a modicum of success. He was doing very well, actually. So I decided to review some of his books. Dave Ramsey picks up right where the Credit Diet leaves off. Where the Credit Diet does this, and all of a sudden people want to check that out. I've been partnered up with Richard Bach on some books, because Amazon will partner books up, buy both and save type things. So do that, but be a publicity machine. Do not turn down an interview. Do not turn down an opportunity to write an article, even if it's for free, because you get to write a byline. John Furman is the author of whatever I'm promoting at the time.
If I can interrupt, the first thing you said about interviews really caught my attention. Doing 300 radio interviews for one book is huge, and that had to have moved some books. Who was setting up those interviews? Was it you? Did you have a publicist?
No, I didn't. No, I never had.
And
a
how did you
publicist.
find 300 radio stations that would interview you?
Well, there's a pretty good process. The first one I did was really bad, and I just want to grab this. This was one of the older covers of when Reject Me, I Love It first came out. Now, one of the problems with this is the coloring. All right, this color of blue and red do not photocopy well. I don't know if you knew that, especially if you're doing black and. Remember, this is 1996. We didn't have color copiers, or at least that I could afford. So here was my marketing budget. I hadn't sold the book yet, and the publisher that I signed with, people said, "Why'd you sign with him?" Because he gave me a contract. That's why. But there wasn't any advance. It was basically write it. We'll see how it goes. So I took this, and kind of laid it down on a copy machine like that, and just ran off some copies. And it was like 4 cents a copy, whatever it was, and I spent about $20. And the backside was blank, so I started typing letters to radio stations. This is a copy of my book, and I was getting calls from radio stations going, "You got to walk the walk," because nobody would dare send out a horrendous marketing piece like this unless they were trying to make a point. And I said, "You're exactly right. Let's do an interview." And the first one that we got was a little station called KGO, which is in San Francisco. It's the #1 Northern California radio station. It's a 50,000 watt deal. And I did like 5 minutes, and within an hour had already sold like $55. And then what happened was then the next round of letters that go out, you've heard them on KGO, and we just kind of dovetailed it. But there are also, and one of the things that we talk about in when I do the seminars is there are publications that you can actually buy ads in to promote your availability for interviews. Radio and TV Interview Report is one such place. And there are many, many, many others, where I bought advertising. Then there are companies that provide a service, and they actually book you, and they call it pay per appearance. And if they don't get you anything, it doesn't cost you anything. If they get you into a #1 market, it might cost you $100 for the show. If they get you into #10 market, it might cost you $25 for the show. So it's a sliding scale. You just commit to do them. And what I suggest, unless you are incredibly well off now, I start with the free ones. Okay, That was like my dad always taught me, if you want to fix something, start with the cheapest solution and work your way up. And that's worked out really, really well. But I've never really used a publicist. They're out there. I will say that, how many of you write fiction? Okay. Publicists really are more geared toward nonfiction work, just as a whole. If you found one that says, I specialize in fiction, and they've got some great clients, by all means use them. They're very professional. But by and large, it's easier to explain to media outlets nonfiction, because you're not making anything up, where fiction is a little bit harder. Everybody thinks, oh, well, it's just a story. Well, not necessarily. I mean, I've read some great fiction over the years. I love reading fiction. It helps me with my nonfiction. If he can make something up, so can I. No, I'm just kidding. So, be careful. Be careful. Network. Get recommended a publicist rather than looking for one in the phone book.
I have a question, John.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Did I misunderstand you about, did you say you can switch publisher?
No, publishers. No, you don't have a choice in that.
Okay, I misunderstood what you
No,
said about publishers.
Yeah, a publisher will come in and anybody self-publish? Okay, we can talk about that maybe. But if you're at a small publisher but you're doing real well, that title will get bought out by a bigger publisher with better distribution.
Oh, it'll be the title of.
Yeah, they'll kind of renegotiate the deal, and here's the beauty: you get paid for that too. They'll come in and say, I don't know if anybody remembers The Christmas Box. That was a great little short story. The guy
Started out as a self-published book.
photocopied and then one of the major publishing houses bought it out. Well, actually, a small publisher bought it out, and then a major publishing house comes in and says, we'll buy that from you, and it wasn't doing all that well for them. We'll buy it for $100,000.
What would make another publisher do that?
Believe it or not, coincidence, somebody read the book and said, this is right up our alley. There are wrong publishers for your work. I've learned that. But there are the other ones that go, this fits right in with and they decided to make it a gift book. And that was their whole thing. So they went in and bought it and then created this massive campaign behind it. And I think it's like 4.5 million copies later.
Let me ask one more question, then I'll open it up to you guys. I can kind of walk around with the mic so we get a good recording of this as well. What kinds of things should an author include on a marketing plan, and should you include that kind of information when contacting these literary agents?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. So many of the magazines tell you that, send a query letter, and what they don't tell you is that is going to be step one at best. Okay? When I did the credit diet, and one of the reasons we were able to get into these big publishers is, my agent sent me a cookie cutter of a proposal they use for a very, very successful business writer. And she said, this is what they want. Each book should have its own business plan, and that's part of the proposal. What publishers want is, they kind of want a sure bet. Okay, they're going to spend probably 90% of their advertising, marketing, and publishing budget on 2 or 3, sure bets. Tom Clancy, Stephen King, Nora Roberts, they get all the money.
Well, then.
Right? Yeah. But what they'll do is if you have an interesting proposal, they'll take a shot on you. You're not going to get their money; it's already spent. But if you have an idea, they'll take off. I'll give you an example. When we did the credit diet, the proposal started off where it's basically is why write the book? Well, because everybody's in debt. Okay, why you? Because I was really in debt, and I got out of it. Who's your competition? They want to know about other books like yours. And they don't want to hear that yours is better. They just want to know. Why is there room for another one? Then for me, because I speak and do lectures and talks all over the place, they want to know what I'm going to do to sell books. Now here's the key phrase. And when we do our one-day seminar, we spend about 2 hours on this. But the key phrase is, in the proposal is, depending on the contract. All right. Now I learned that after the fact. What do I mean by that? Well, what I had said was, when I speak in front of audiences, my audiences range in size to groups like this. To the biggest was 5,000 people at Lehigh University. Well, let me tell you, when you do that, some people buy some books. We had a good weekend that weekend. But the point is, if you know you're going to be doing that many audiences and you have an idea how many people, there are some pretty safe formulas to figure out how many books you're going to sell. So what I said was, in the next 4 years, I personally will take responsibility for selling 16,000 copies, at a rate of minimum of 4,000 a year. I can buy them sooner or later. Now, what you don't do is make a boastful statement like that unless you can back it up. If you're going to do a lot of small groups like this, say I can do in the next 5 years 1,000. Be realistic. You don't need a garage full of books. All right, you already know what's in them. You wrote them. But what I learned was that one phrase, depending on the contract. See, I didn't do that. I just said, I'll buy 16,000 copies over 4 years. And they said, oh, okay. Now, had I said depending on the contract, I still would have bought 16,000 copies because I knew I could sell them. I had that many audiences. But had they said, well, we'll offer you this, and I'll say, well, then I'm only going to buy these. And it becomes a thing of negotiation. If you want to give me more money, I'll do that. It's just one of those things that you learn. But, let them know what you think you can sell on your own.
Say, give me more money. Do you mean percentage or?
Both.
You
What?
don't mean advance though.
Oh yeah, it's everything is open for negotiation when you get that opportunity. Okay, up until that point, I just went okay. Yep, here's another contract. Okay, but because I had an agent, they got me into that arena for the first time. And again, my background is in sales and marketing. Negotiating is nothing new to me. But, on the writing and publishing side, I hadn't been exposed to that. I hadn't had the opportunity to do that. So I learned.
Let's go back to that. That's one thing that's not perfectly clear in my mind was how you found the Lowenstein agency. How did they first show interest? Were you just sending out query letters?
No, the funny thing was I had sent out query letters and I never got any response. And then I tried, to use my marketing skills, At the time, one of the more popular brands were the Chicken Soup books. Okay, so what I did was I created a junk mail, basically. In other words, the outside of my envelope said, "Congratulations if you're the guys who signed Chicken Soup. If not, open this." And and then I went through this whole. I had a slick glossy and all my publishing credentials, or my published work, behind it. But what happened was, they found me at that Maui marketplace. I had done a mini proposal, if you will, and they were there. Agents do go to certain writers' conferences. Now, why would they go to the Maui Writers' Conference as opposed to the Wilmington Writers' Conference? Because it's Maui. It's not that there are better writers there. It's Maui. And they get to write the whole thing off. In getting to know these agents, as I work with them, and I ask a lot of questions, and don't be afraid to do that. I found out that they're perfectly happy to come home without anything. It's not, they don't go there specifically to get a book. They go there and, hey, if it happens, great. It's like a bonus. I will tell you this. If you get an unsolicited offer from an agent, run. Okay? I've got a file in my computer, again, from working with writers, of some of the bad guys out there, and there are many. And don't ask me how they find what you're working on, but they do. They're like mind readers at a carnival. Would love to work with you on your next young adult piece of fiction.
But just to be perfectly clear, you put together kind of this really sort of outside of the box letter package.
Yep.
that was sort of direct mail. But that's not actually how you found
No.
your agent. You actually
No.
met your agent in person at this writers' conference, right?
They saw my manuscript at the conference and actually contacted me shortly after the conference, and then I went to New York to meet him for the first time.
You weren't in there, right?
No.
No.
And how many times has this come up that I've mentioned this before over the past year and a half or so? So many writers that I meet that have published a book and found a publisher and found an agent first, they meet their agents at a writers conference. I think it's wise to do these sendings because you kind of get a sense of some of the agents' personalities and
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. But ultimately, so many writers that I meet and have met that have gone on to publishing success first met their agent at a writers conference.
And that's very true. Any opportunity that you have to meet with agents, but you know what? Do just that. Meet with them. All right, you're not going to pitch your book. You know, I was at one of the things that I do is a lot of public speaking, and they have speakers bureaus, and they're kind of like agents, but for speakers. All right, we went to a big conference, and I kid you not, there were speakers bureau owners or agents, if you will, running around with signs on them. I'm not looking for new speakers. Leave me alone. You know, because they get tired of it. Hire me, book me. I'm the best, and I'm this, and I'm that. Don't, you know, because not every agent is a fit. There are some agents who specialize in historic romance novels, and they're the best in the business at that. There are some that specialize in business. There are some that specialize in books that translate easy into film because they've got connections on both sides in publishing and Hollywood. Do your research. Do your research. And don't be afraid to ask questions. When you meet them at a writers' conference, tell them, gee, I'm looking to branch out. I would like to see something in film. What would I do different as opposed to a regular proposal? Okay, here's a great question. If you were to find an author that you wanted to work with, how do you prefer to be contacted? Let them tell you. You know, some of them will be blunt and not very nice and say, not at writers' conferences, leave me alone. Well, you know what? You get to choose. The funny thing is, you can succeed without an agent. They'd have a tough time without authors, and you need to remember that. You're the commodity that makes them some income. Be selective. You know, if you find someone that wants to work with you, find out why. What did they bring to the party? You know, what was nice about Eileen was she started at Prentice Hall, and then she went to Penguin as an editor, senior editor, before she got in. So she's seen both sides of the fence, and they have to serve an apprenticeship. So it's pretty interesting. Serendipity is a big thing in the publishing business. I think that I'm successful because I do everything, anything that I can to promote, to get ideas. You know, I'll be working on a book topic, and because of that, I'll meet someone at a writers' conference. I'll be trying to do direct mail for agents, and someone will say, hey, you know what? You should just put it over here. When we're doing what we do, we discover all kinds of unique ways to take the next step, and it's often given to us by people in the same room.
So it sounds like you met one of the senior agents at the Maui Writers Conference. Do you remember the exact setting? Did you meet her after a panel, or did you meet her at the hotel bar, which is a
No, I
common-
just got a note saying, you know, we should get together, and I said okay, and you know, of course it had to be outside because she chain smoked, you know, but so darling, you know. I'm serious. It was like Hollywood, you know. Got to her office in New York, she had that big leather couch, and the problem with guys like me being so tall, when you sit into it, your knees are way up here, you know, your buttons are down near the floor, and she's sitting at a giant desk. It was cartoonish. I mean, she was just a tiny woman. She was smaller than you, and she's up at this desk going, you know, hey, don't tell anybody I'm smoking in my office. Okay. You know, all I can think of is, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Beetlejuice. I mean, it's a really odd, with the lady with the hole in her. I'm telling you, this is what she looked like for real, except without the hole. I mean, she didn't have that. But, you know, hello. And then Eileen comes in the room, and she looked like she came out of a Glamour magazine. I mean, she was absolutely beautiful, a young lady, but knew her. I mean, you couldn't shake her confidence. You know, I was the one that was shaking when we walked out of Wiley going, we could have signed him right then and there. She goes, I know. So, but yeah.
How did I'm sorry if I'm kind of pushing the point here, but you got a note from this agent. That's fascinating. So how did she find out about you?
Okay, at that particular conference, what happened is if you went into the marketplace, and a lot of conferences have a marketplace, and it's basically a revenue generator to keep the cost of the conference down for everybody. Mm-hmm. And you pay, and I may be wrong, but I believe it was $125. And they would send you the paperwork you would need to submit your manuscript. In other words, it would ask, you know, who you are, what you're writing, but it was like, you know, give me 10 words on your writing history, list your publishing accomplishments, so you were kind of doing a bullet point resume, and then a bullet point proposal about that particular book. That goes into the pool, and they just sit there, and every agent there gets a binder with everybody's, and they just kind of go through it, you know. And some of them will walk away with nothing. I had another agent contact me from there, and then gave me a card, and then when I tried to track her down, she was in San Francisco. You know, this number doesn't exist. There's no, you know, so that happens too. So those opportunities, you know, I don't want to discourage anybody from trying anything. I'm just dead against people spending money that they don't have to spend because there's no guarantees.
Yeah, I actually got an agent once by submitting a proposal at a writers' conference.
Mm-hmm.
I then did not write the book, which is another story. But I know that at the North Carolina Writers' Con, now that was free. You got a brief time, but the agents were there looking for manuscripts. At the North Carolina Writers' Conference, if you want to get your manuscript looked at, you have to pay for it, which to me, after having done it the other way, seemed, what? You know, like $100, $200 just to have someone look at it. So to me, that did not seem like a good idea. And I wonder what your opinion of that is. Like if you had, now that marketplace proposal,
Yeah.
that seems like that could be worthwhile. Obviously it was for you in that instance, but would you, okay, I have two questions. One, what do you think of paying to meet an agent?
Mm-hmm.
And two, how would you find out about marketplace proposals of that kind at writers' conferences? So you, in fact, did not have to. You can do that without attending the conference, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
absolutely
so how
correct.
would you find that out?
Maui Writers Conference has the Maui manuscript marketplace. You can go to Maui, Google it. I'm not sure if it's .com or .org, but Maui Writers Conference. You know, pay to meet agents. If you go to Writers Conference, that's basically what you've done. Okay, you know, unless there is something, you know, genre specific that you wanted to learn, you know, and we were talking about earlier, you know, how to kill somebody. I mean, that if you were looking to write crime novels, that's probably a good thing to know. And if you had the chance to talk to, you know, a writer who happened to also be in a previous career a forensic pathologist, that might be a good reason to attend. But basically, by and large, people are going to writers' conferences to A, meet other writers, because nobody on the planet understands what we go through except us, and B, meet agents. So you've already paid to meet that agent. If you have to pay to get them to read something, again, this is personal. No. Now, if you have to pay to put a proposal in, absolutely, because then they're going to come to you and say, you know, I'm interested in that proposal. All right? I've turned down agents who wanted to represent me because they had no experience in my marketplace. Doesn't mean they're bad agents, they're just bad for me. You know, don't be afraid to do that. It's, you know, the world needs to see your work, but under your terms as much as possible. You know, so it's very important.
I think there's an interesting distinction too here. When you went to the Maui Writers Conference, it sounds like you had several books that you had published through the smaller press
Yes.
as a bit of leverage. You could point at these things that you, and you probably pointed at numbers that you'd actually sold.
Oh, and that's exactly right. When you do the resume, you know, they say, well, what did you write and how many did it sell? And this is a great point. How many of you here, before you came here, had no clue who I was, had never heard of me before? Just raise your hand. If you never heard of me, ever.
Well,
Right.
on the internet, when you get
Well, yeah, but all right, before Stacy launched my publicity campaign. But, you know, and most agents hadn't either. So when I put down Reject Me, I Love It, you know, at that, and I'll probably get the numbers wrong, but it was, you know, like 120, 130,000 copies and this, that, and the other, and I, you know, here and here and here and here. And I put down, you know, smaller numbers. And then I went back and I put the dates of publication so that, you know, Reject Me, which came out first, had the most sales and all the way through. And, you know, and then negotiating for foreign rights. put that in there. And then I put, I speak to an average of 15 to 30,000 people a year. All those things are important for the types of books that I was writing. That's the tiebreaker. And that's all you're looking for is the tiebreaker. When you have your topic, answer the question, who cares, number one. And the second question is always going to be, why you? And if you can bring those two things across in a small proposal, you'll generally, get somebody to talk to you, And that was a hard one for me, Say, hey, what are you writing about now? I'm writing about this. Who cares? And I wanted to smack the guy, but I realized he was right. Yes, sir.
As far as internet goes,
Mm-hmm.
for example, there's a website, scribed.com.
Yeah.
Do agents look at excerpts or book proposals on something like scribed.com? Is that a way that they kind of look at that as a pool to look around to try and find something that they can market?
I think more and more that they are, but with a keener eye. I mean, you have to, on something like that, you have to blow them away. I mean, it has to be like a Pulitzer Prize winner, because there are everybody can go in there. You can put a coloring book in there, because it's free access. However, that being said, there are more and more avenues coming to the internet, and it's going to be a place that they can go. They can't attend all the writers' conferences. I just looked. I don't know if you ever saw a website called Shaw Guides. It's every writers' conference on the planet, and Shaw Guide or Shaw Guides. SHAW, yeah. And it's every writers' conference on any topic. They have like the Antioch left-handed redheaded conference, and you can go there if you meet those qualifications. But so agents are looking more at the internet than they did, even 3 or 4 years ago. But I would put it there, but I wouldn't stop there. I mean, I would definitely put it in the mix. I would take advantage of anything.
That's kind of low probability. But now, do some agents actually have a website where they say we solicit proposals?
Yep. One of the things, with any of that, whether it's an agent or you're going to a publisher direct, and you can solicit publishers without an agent. And some publishers will tell you, we prefer not to have agents solicit us. Biggest thing I can tell you is follow their instructions to the letter. If they say, send me a note, send a note. Don't send them a note attached to a 700-page manuscript. They don't even read the note. Okay? Now, other ones would say, especially in fiction, and I'm not a fiction writer, but I know that they will say, don't send me anything except a completed manuscript. All right? Don't send them like a middle chapter, and say, I'm not going to tell you the end. Tell them the end. Okay, because they want to know. Just follow their instructions. 3 sample chapters, newspaper, whatever it is, send it exactly the way they want it.
If you had unlimited money, let's say you had $500,000 to develop a marketing plan, what things would you absolutely include in a budget of $500,000 for a marketing plan?
Wow. I'm just sitting here thinking of $500,000.
Well, I mean, you could blow it all in a TV spot,
absolutely.
which probably wouldn't be wise.
No. Number one on my list is radio. Whatever you have to spend to get on radio. Radio is the ideal medium for writers. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm a prime example. When I grew up, my father told me I had a face for radio and I needed to be there. The thing is, it's convenient as heck. You can be anywhere and do interviews anywhere else. Like I said, I'm in New Hampshire doing interviews in Hawaii, Texas, Idaho. Second interview I ever did was on a Detroit radio station, and the host was Mr. Ted Nugent, the Motor City Madman himself, and we had a blast. But at the time, I was in New York. When I'm traveling, I don't have to give up my radio spots. Okay, so you can get a lot more exposure on radio. Television's a wonderful medium. Don't misunderstand me. I've done TV spots. I was in New York, and we did some TV spots for Good Day New York, which was great. But I had to be in New York, so I had to leave, and it's an early morning show. It comes on just before Good Morning America. And so I had to leave New England at 2 o'clock in the morning to get to the studio, and you know what happens, guys, and I'll direct this at the guys, you shave at 2 o'clock in the morning, all right, by 6 a.m. they're dabbing more plaster on my face to hide 5 hours of stubble to go on the air for 5 minutes. Where with radio, you have the opportunity to say, hey, can you stick around for another segment? This is really great. Call-ins. It's amazing. So radio would be number one. The second thing is, if you want to have, those of you that have your books out, are they on Amazon? Okay. This is a fun thing to do. And sells books too, so that's kind of good. Go to your email list, okay? And I'm going to teach you real quick viral marketing. I'm not going to teach you words. We do that when we do the one-day seminar I was talking about earlier. But basically, contact all your friends and tell them to contact all their friends and tell them not to buy your book until December 19th at 1 o'clock. Oh, it's hysterical. We took the credit diet to like number 49 on Amazon. Now, it only lasts for a day, so print that page. But it was really cool because we just viral marketed it. And everybody buys it. Amazon's tracking numbers are based on books per hour, okay? So that's why we tell them 1 o'clock. And when 10, and it takes like 10, and all of a sudden it starts moving up and moving up and moving up. And the next thing you know, what happens is when you get into the top 100, you rotate onto the front page. So as soon as somebody hits Amazon, there's your book. So it's really kind of cool, and that's free. So I'm all about doing stuff for free. More of this $500,000 Stacy's getting me that I can keep. I'm going to work at that. The other thing is, and there are great examples all throughout here, is get as many things as you can with the name of your book on it. All right. One of the things that I did with actually when Reject Me came out, not in this in a soft cover, is actually when we went to. This is a bad example. This is one of the, I don't even know what language this is, but anyways, this was the new Reject Me. When the publisher had some money, he kind of got off the cartoon kick. But what we did was, any printer doesn't overrun, okay? They always make more covers than they need. So what I did was I said, well, look, have them give me, I'll buy them all. They're not very expensive. They're like pennies a piece. And I just want this piece right here. So they'll cut them and ship them to you. Well, that became my postcard. Anytime I did any mailings, I sent this out. So it was, and again, understand, the secret to selling 750,000 copies of anything is sell them one. Get somebody to buy one, and watch what happens. Okay? And here's what I mean. And I talked about it earlier. I was in a book signing, okay? And as authors, you've heard both sides. People will tell you book signings are just an incredible waste of time and you don't make any money and da-da-da-da. Maybe. I just like talking to people. Well, anyways, I did the book signing. It was at a Borders Books, which is great. And guy came in, bought the book, signed the book, chatted like this, and off he went. Read the book and called me and said, how do I get in touch with the publisher? And I said, well, it depends. Why? I said, I know how to get right through, but I want to make sure that. He said, well, I need to order some of these. I said, oh, well, in that case, here's his number. And he ordered 1,400 copies for his company, and we were off and running. Do those things, any of the free things, book signings, because again, you're looking for that one special person, whoever it might be. It's just like Stacy said, how do you find an agent? You just talk to people. You never know what's going to happen. Give away your books. Give them away. This is one of those. This is how you do it when you're flat broke, okay? Which is usually right after it's come out in print. You're about as broke as you're going to get. And so the book came out, and I was a hard negotiator, so I negotiated 10 free copies into my contract. And I know, I'm pretty much in awe of myself too. But anyways, I had these 10 free copies, and my brother says, well, how much is it? And I said, well, it's $10.95. And he says, well, okay, do you have a nickel? I said, no, just give me $10. So I said, so he gave me the money, and I knew I could buy him at that time at a 50% discount. So that meant with this $10, I can buy 2 books. And that's how I looked at it. So I had a big sign over my desk that says, sell it to your friends, give it to people you don't know. And that's what I started doing. Anytime I could sell a couple of my friends, I would replace them and give them out to people at newspapers, people in businesses. Again, I'm writing nonfiction, but I want to get it out to as many places as I can. So I would have a budget to buy books, okay, and keep them in circulation. I'm not looking for you to fill up your garage with books, but that would be definitely part of the budget. The last thing is, if I had $500,000, I would take out an ad in the Thursday edition of USA Today. That's the book readers edition. Okay, now you can have the New York Times and all that highfalutin, you know, I think some guy that had a thesaurus dropped on his head comes out and has 7 ways of saying sand, you know, writing a book review about a book nobody's going to read. I would rather take out an ad in USA Today, and then you can say whatever you want. There it is. And the reason I know that is Mark Victor Hansen, one of the co-authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul, I got to spend a half a day with Mark, and that's what they did. That's what made Chicken Soup the success that it was that, of course, they had a lot more money. They spent, at that time, which was 98, 99, $125,000 to put a full-page ad in USA Today. And up until that point, they had not sold, I think, about 8,000 copies of the book.
That's a gamble.
Yeah, that was a huge gamble. But again, they were the ones that taught me that writing is a business. You know, in fact, his exact comment was, if you're passionate about your message, you better make some money, otherwise nobody's going to hear about it. You need to be able to make the money so that people can afford to see your stuff. And that's, and again, once you create that cottage industry of themselves, which they did, and it was, you know, Chicken Soup for the plumber's soul and Chicken Soup for the spaghetti maker's soul, and it got a little crazy, but, you know, they're not doing so bad. But they segued. You know, they got Campbell's Soup to be one of their sponsors, okay? Then they got, and I'll probably be wrong, I believe it was Pedigree Dog Food to sponsor them, and they had Chicken Soup for the Pet Lover's Soul, and they started selling the book, and this is what I talk about thinking outside the box, in pet stores and feed and grain stores. So, you know, do that. Figure out, I challenge you to go home and in the next 48 hours come up with one place where you would put your book that's not a bookstore. You know, and just see that.
And a perfect example, I'm looking at one over here, this blue book on the second row that's kind of buried back there with the dog on the cover. This is Garth Stein's book, The Art of Racing in the Rain. I interviewed Garth up in Raleigh a couple of months ago on the TV show up in Raleigh. And this book you might recognize from being in Starbucks. Somehow either he or HarperCollins, his publisher for this book, negotiated a deal to have The Art of Racing in the Rain displayed near the counter in Starbucks all across the country. So in addition to going in and buying a cup of coffee, people could pick up a copy of the book or at least see it there. And there's something, I think, about seeing a book in a place where there aren't, you know, 1,000 books around it
Sure.
that draws your eye to it, and you wonder, well, what's up with this guy? How did he get, you know, his
Yep.
book there? And then people go home and research it. And his book has been on Amazon's top 100 pretty much since it came out. It was a New York Times best-selling book. So that sort of furthers corroborates
Absolutely.
what you're saying about, you know,
Here's
getting
a
it in interesting places.
Find restaurants where people, you know, I mean, Starbucks is a good example where people go and sit and read and stuff like that. Go to the restaurant, you know, and again, do your research. If it's a place where people go and they eat slow, you know, in other words, they relax, they might want to read a book. Go into the restaurant and say, listen, you know, if the restaurant owner won't talk to you, talk to the head waiter, waitress, host, whatever. Say, listen, how would you like to make more in tips? Well, what do you mean? Well, if somebody comes in, I'm going to leave you 5 copies of my book. Just give it. You want to read while you eat? You know, here you go. Here's a copy of the book. If you like the book, you can buy it on the way out. If not, just bring it back. All right. And what happens is you tell them, look, you know, we'll split it 60-40. I get 60, you get 40, which is a standard bookstore split. So you might as well do it that way, right? And all of a sudden, you come back at the end of the week, how many do you have? As long as they don't have the same amount as when you went in, you're in good shape because somebody's talking about your book. And that's what you really want, is creating that buzz. And I'm incredibly proud that you have a copy of your book with you. I think that everybody, if you've got your book published, you need to have it with you. You need to throw it on your dashboard. Vanity Place, websites. You can get a web name for like $10 at GoDaddy. Okay. Unfortunately, the guy that used to have my website when I was really speaking all over the place, I had one for my books, I had one for my own personal name. He let that go to some DUI lawyer in Seattle. So he's not my web guy anymore. But, when you come out with a new book, okay, when you're thinking of a title, get that domain name. Exactly the way it is on your title. The nice thing is when I first started, I couldn't get rejectmeiloveit.com because back then it was too long. They had to be short. Now, heck, you can put, The Art of Racing in the Rain and the author's name.com. So you can do those things. Do that. Invite people to your website. Give it away. Yes.
If I could just for a minute,
Sure.
and then we'll take a couple more questions here. I do have this sign-up sheet. I'm going to pass it around. If you'd like to put your email address down here, then I can let you know about future speakers when we have them here. I'll get this started. Do
Yeah.
you have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm going back to one of your comments at the very beginning. I just want to be real clear. You said click the review this book on Amazon, and in your review you just throw yours in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've done these, and I wish, because I would show you, but it may have been taken down now because it was years ago, and it was somebody like, I think, M. Scott Peck, who wrote The Road Less Traveled. M. Scott Peck did an interview a day minimum for 11 consecutive years. That's why it was on the New York Times bestseller list for 12. Okay. And I didn't know that he had done that until later on. And, one of the guys that I had known and said, well, you're writing, personal development stuff, kind of like M. Scott Peck. And I said, oh, who's M. Scott Peck? He said, well, he writes the same kind of stuff as you.
I guess my question is, how can you determine which one of those are really credible and worth sending to? And then what is kind of your limit?
Yeah.
Like if you say, like you, I check all the free ones first.
Right.
And then the ones that are $5 to $10 to $20, I'll go for. But if it's like a $700 entry fee.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm going, no, I don't think that's quite what I'm looking for.
No,
But
because
they
for
offer
$700
cash
you can
prizes.
print your book yourself.
Yeah.
Writer's Digest is a great source. Not so much in the classifieds, because they will put a classified one in there that'll get you every now and then, but every now and then, and I think you're going to address this probably better than I, they will do an issue on writing contests, and you want to read that and see those contests. The Writer's Market, which is the same, that's a big one, has annual contests in the back. And again, they kind of screen those. There aren't any bad ones in there, but you have much more information than I, and I'm happy to
If you are
learn.
writing for children, you need to be a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. It is an international organization. It's a $60 a year fee. We have a very, very strong Carolinas region chapter. We just had a conference last weekend in Durham with agents and editors, as well as speakers.
Exactly.
They will answer any question along these lines that you have.
Again, that's the Society of Children's Book
Writers
and Illustrators. And they have a website. I visited. It's a great, very helpful.
Yeah, resources like that, I think, and that's an excellent point. Whenever you can, hang around with other writers, regardless of genre, but because a writer knows a writer knows a writer, eventually you end up connecting and getting information like that, which is incredibly valuable. That website, I would imagine, without having been there, can probably answer that question like that.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask a question here.
Yeah.
You make me feel very guilty as
That's
as
my
a
job, I'm
reader,
Catholic. Yes.
After you spoke about the man that came to you shaking with the book. I have read many books that I would like to do that, contact the authors, and I just never have
Yeah.
had the nerve to try through the publisher, and now everybody is on the internet. So now I feel very guilty, thank you.
Well, no, it's my gift to all
Should
of you.
feel inspired.
But, you know, and it's funny you say that. I make sure my contact information is in every one of my books, and it's just a simple email address. Email me. One of the writers that I admired over the years, actually was a hero of mine, is a fellow by the name of Og Mandino. Most people don't know who he is, and yet he sold 20 million books. Okay, his first book, The Greatest Salesman in the World, still sells over 100,000 copies a month today.
He was in the Success magazine.
He was one of the editors of Success magazine in one of its earlier incarnations. But what struck me about him was he answered every contact personally. I mean, and he gets way more than I, but he does. He answers every single one because he felt, and as do I, if someone took the time to write to me, I owe him at least that courtesy. You know, I mean, I may not answer them that day, but I will answer everybody, and I think everybody should. But that being said, there are a lot of authors who kind of buy into their own press. You know, I think I'm going to be a recluse. I'm going to, you know, I need to have some kind of psychological problem. I need to be institutionalized. Something add to the mystique, if you will, of the career. And you know, and I don't want to. I'm not saying this to belittle it. It's a job. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that every day you have to get up and do your job. That's how you get better at your job. You know, people say, how do you learn to speak? Speak. How do you learn to write? Write. I mean, there are days where I have these, you know, what do they call it, the streaming consciousness, and I write and I write, and it's garbage. You just got to throw it all away. And, you know, the difference is, bless you, with some of us is we go, oh, I've run out of words, I can't. It's just a day. Tomorrow I'm going to write something else, you know, and sometimes it ends up being an article, sometimes it ends up being, you know, kindling for my fireplace. You know, but you just have to do it every single day, and that's how you get better at it, you know.
Do you have a website?
Not anymore, because I've backed off on my speaking, you know, and I don't, now that I've moved down here to the beach, I don't want to warehouse my stuff anymore, so I just send everybody to the publisher. But that will change. I've got some things here for y'all to take. We're going to do this in much greater detail middle of next month. It's a full day publishing, I guess is the way to say it, publishing seminar. We're going to take the mystique and the myth, go into a lot more detail than even though Stacy had some great questions, as did y'all, about putting together a business plan for selling your books. It's not a typical writers conference because I don't really get into what you're writing or how well you write. I'm not qualified to judge that, but you know, I can give you the marketing. You know, I like to call it mastering marketing for the meek. Okay, you know, for those of you that are afraid of, oh, I don't know, I can't sell anything, it's not true. I've learned some great. Where are we going to do it? We're going to be doing it right at the Marriott on Carolina Beach. So I've got all that stuff here.
Got some flyers up here.
Yeah, we got some flyers. The one thing I think that they forgot, actually, I'll just kind of pass them out, and I'll tell you when you get them what they forgot. I want to make sure that they did. Yeah, they did. I forgot to tell you where to send them in, but there's 2 pages, and I kind of did that. But anyways, while those are going around, I want to show you. I want to show you what you're in for and why you do this, because it truly is some kind of fun things. Most of these you're not going to be able to read, as can I. This is Spanish. This isn't out yet. This was Hungarian. Taiwan. Croatia. Greek.
Can you pass them these around?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, nobody ever takes the foreign language ones. Like, what's the point? I like doing these. This is Korean, and this was kind of fun though. This one it gives you an idea, or actually it's more of balancing your life. These are all different incarnations of Reject Me, I Love It. And it's really kind of funny because in the Netherlands, look how much smarter I am. You know, same book. I don't know. I'm really smart in Holland.
About twice as many
I
people.
am, but yeah, it's, you know, and then of course I could sit here, this is what you see, you take these at Starbucks and you just sit in the corner and you harem for a lot and people go, oh, like Michael, look at,
He's reading.
yeah, he's reading, he's fluent in Dutch. But those are the cool things. What I did was, when this happened, part of my stellar negotiation skills, I get 3 copies of each book in every language, so that I have it because it's just neat. For those of you that don't understand foreign rights, it's what we call a cash cow. It's huge because they just pay you money up front. What happens is a foreign publisher comes in and says, we'll buy the rights to publish it in this particular country, and that's exactly what they do. They pay a lump sum for the rights, you know, over a certain period of time. It's like an advance. The difference is when they pay the publisher, and again, this is all subject to negotiation, but the standard is it's 50-50 split. So that's kind of neat.
Do you still draw royalties on?
You will. It's just like if it's an advance. If it exceeds, you know, that initial amount of money, you do start to draw royalties on it. And in most countries, the fact is, it's not going to happen. I mean, there are a few in Spanish. Yes, for some reason, people in Spain or in Spanish-speaking countries like my stuff. So I do get royalties on those, but we're not getting a lot of checks from Croatia. So you just, because both of them have it. But, you know, that money up front, that's what you count on, because it's real cash and you just get it.
Is that an address or email
That's
address?
exactly what was missing. That was the one thing I was missing. I will tell you that if you want to, the easiest thing to do is I'll give you a mailing address. 704 Ocean Boulevard, number 2, and that's in Carolina Beach. And the zip, I'll let you get to the zip. I know I'm blurting it really quickly, is 28428? 28428, yes.
Used to live there, that's where I know.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever sold a book to a foreign country before it was accepted in the United States?
That's a great question. Not rights-wise, but it was with Reject Me. What happened was a book distributor got a hold of it and happened to be on a trip to England, and it did really well. You know, so it wasn't a translation issue. And my publisher sent me a note and he says, we're going to change the copy, the cover, to say international bestseller, because after they sold it in England, they sold a like amount in Australia. And I had, at that point, sold, I think it was, again, I'm going to estimate, it was around 10,000 in England and 15,000 in Australia. So it's 25,000 copies outside the country. And I think we were at like 150 in the US. So, yeah, sometimes you do a little bit better, you know, a stranger in a strange land type thing. But we caught up in the States eventually in that one. But you guys are great. You got some great questions.
What is your, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are these international books, were they written for the purpose of that group, that audience, or did they translate from English to whatever?
They translated, you know, so there's probably some things in there that I didn't say.
You reached that audience
Yeah.
for some reason, and it was just
Right.
your basic knowledge or experience of whatever you've
Yeah.
seen.
For me, I mean, the way I like to explain it, I think I'm living proof. If I can do it, so can you type thing. You know, I'm not, my biggest fear is running out of words. You know, it's like, oh gosh, first the vowels go, you know, then syllables, and then I don't know, but yeah. But you know what, to me, I just, I try to write as if I'm having a cup of coffee with somebody. That's my style. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just mine. And either a lot of coffee drinkers around the world, or it's just, you know, I'm just a simple guy. I don't have anything profound. I didn't invent anything. I didn't do a lot of studies. I wrote, when I wrote Reject Me, it seemed to hit a nerve, and people started, just like you guys, well, what about this? Well, what about this? What about this? And I just started thinking, well, I don't know, here's what I think about it. And it goes back to what I said earlier. I don't know, somebody else is going to judge whether I'm any good at this or not. I'm good at selling. Okay, I know that. I'm good at selling books. I don't know if I'm a good writer, but I'm not going to change my style, because actually, quite frankly, it scares me. I don't know if I could do it. So I just continue to write my way, and to a point now where hopefully the people that have enjoyed my books now just feel comfortable. Okay, I'm going to buy it because I'm comfortable. Even if it's not something I necessarily need, I'll be comfortable with it. And I mean, that's one of the things I try to focus on now, which is a little bit different.
So is your website johnfurman.com?
It used to be.
What is it currently?
I took it down.
You don't have a website?
No, I won't. No. My email address is in. I'll give you my. If you guys, I'm going to give
Not on
you.
here, that's
No,
why there's no
I.
email address.
No, I'm going to give you my own email address because nobody else uses it anymore because it's very archaic. But when Reject Me came out, AOL was the only game in town. So I got rejectme@aol.com, and people say, well, real professionals don't use AOL anymore. And that's probably true, but it's mine, and it's in 750,000 books. How can I give it up?
Check me at AOL.com.
Yeah, that's the easiest way, and that goes directly to me. It doesn't get filtered through anybody else. So, if you send something, if you have a question after you leave here, just go ahead and zap it along, and I'll be more than happy to answer for you.
Again, if I can just wrap up the video portion of this, and then we'll be able to break up here for a minute. The guest is John Furman. The book is Reject Me. I love it. If you want to find out more about this video, it'll be on the howtopublishabook.org website. I think what we're going to probably do here in a minute after we break up, how many folks would want to go out to eat at the Chili's restaurant up on College Boulevard afterwards? Anybody? A couple people? We'll talk about that afterwards. I think John's going to be around for a few minutes to answer some questions afterwards. If you guys want to ask him questions, one-on-one or something like that, he'll be here. He's not going to break out the window or anything.
No.
Split out of here.
No, I don't have anybody to talk to back at my house, so I might as well stick around with some nice
your
people.
emails reject me,
At
but
AOL.com.
not reject me. I love it.
No.
Okay. Just double check.
I get right to the point. Just reject me. Yes.
Two things. This is my little sales pitch thing, too. Of course, I drive down from Raleigh each month to come down here, and gas prices are just insane. But there's two ways that you can contribute to this if you want to keep this kind of discussion series going on here. I love to do it, and I do it kind of out of the passion of it, but a little bit of extra money doesn't hurt. We've got a tip jar up here. If you want to put a couple of bucks in here, that would be great. And then I do have these DVDs, the How to Publish a Book, How to Get a Literary Agent, which is a discussion of how publishers work. I'll sell these directly from me for $10 here today. But the tip jar I'm going to leave up here for you guys, if you would not mind throwing a couple bucks in there. That would help with the gasoline and everything. I think we had one more question here.
Would you recommend having the author's name or the title of the book as the URL, the domain name for your website?
At $10 a shot, I'd get them both. Okay, and the way you can do it, and I'm not a geek, and I have to hire geeks because I don't know, but you can actually have either one go to the same website. In other words, you can have both of them, hand them out, and they'll go to the same site.
Just go to
GoDaddy.
GoDaddy.com and you can buy it.
They've got some stuff at GoDaddy called Website Complete. You can have your own website up in about an hour. It's unbelievable.
Also Network Solutions.
Network Solutions, yeah.
They give you tools to build your own website.